Hello there folks, I'm Dan Brown from asortofinterestinlife.com, and today we're going to have a quick look at a few of the things that I think every boat should have. Now this isn't going to be an exhaustive list or go through every single checkbox on the boat safety certificate or anything like that. It's just a few general things that I think are vital to potential everyday boating scenarios. So, first of all, we've got things that would come under the safety sort of aspect and requirements for a boat, such as your firefighting equipment. So obviously things like this are pretty self-explanatory. A fire blanket, we've got a fire extinguisher here, you can see there's one on the back wall there. And these are the sorts of things that I don't want to go into too much detail because it's sort of a requirement and too obvious almost. So we'll put those to one side and say things that I'm more interested in talking about are the things that I've learnt over time. So things that I think that you definitely need on a boat are a lot of good torches. Now, I have a few torches on board. I've got one of these classic super duper, goodness knows how many LEDs that is, but I've got a few of these, and they're obviously nice for picking up and if I'm out collecting wood from the front, or if when I had the wood stored on the roof. That's obviously very handy to have things like that. Similarly, because obviously I would point out, the reason that I think torches are very important is because down most of the canal there are obviously no street lights and it gets extremely dark. So obviously something like this as well, nice simple camping lantern. This is one of the Vango remote control ones, which is absolutely fantastic. So I can have this down at the front of the boat and be switching it on and off. Lovely stuff. But that's something that I like to hang just off the lip on the back, so when I get back in the dark nights when I'm putting my bike away and things like that, it just throws out light in all directions obviously, so that's very useful. But something that is probably one of the most used things, it's got to be nice simple. This is a, oh goodness knows, a very old Energizer head torch. So you've got your white light on one side and red light on the other. And this is something that I've used for camping. I mean, I've had this for roughly 5-6 years now. Flipping heck, time flies when you're well lit. So yeah, something like this is obviously extremely useful to be able to light things up and have both of your hands free. But one of the uses that I have for the red light is to not destroy my night vision if I'm out doing a little bit of astronomy. So torches are definitely a must in the winter months when it is absolutely pitch black, middle of nowhere, and you can imagine just how dark it can get. And that's why I love having my telescope on board to get out into perfect dark skies. Anyway, stop mentioning astronomy. So, what else do we need? General tools. That's something that, before we go any further, I will say, I've got a toolbox that some of you may have seen in previous videos of all the usual general household tools. We've got various saws for cutting wood. We've got obviously all your screwdrivers and Allen keys and basically everything that you would imagine to have in a toolbox. And there's things that, I don't know, just something as simple as sandpaper that I find useful when just by the door, one of the rails, I don't know if you can see, maybe you can't, no, but basically these rails here that keep the curtains flush with the wall. One of them was slightly sort of a sharp corner by the door, so you'd constantly be sort of snagging and rubbing your clothes on it. So it's just something simple like sandpaper to just take an edge off like that. The last thing that you would ever think about, oh yeah, I better take some sandpaper on this boat with me. But it's like I say, you just never know, and if you are living on a boat, then there's so many little tiny things and little jobs that you might need to find doing, need doing. Something as well that I think is extremely useful. I've got this Leatherman tool here. So it's just your classic sort of multi-tool. Obviously you got your pliers and your knife and all the rest of it. Just the basic things that you would expect to have on one of these. And I think this has been probably one of my most used Christmas presents because there's always something that you can find to do. And there's always a tool on here that seems to just about be right for the job. But my goodness me, that knife is extremely sharp. I stubbed my thumb on it a couple of weeks ago. Oh, anyway, once again, moving swiftly on. So that's torches and tools, just like you would in any normal house or any normal dwelling. Those are definitely very important things. But when it comes to actual boating, there's a few things that you definitely, well, what I personally always have had on board since pretty much day one. And that is a series of various things to moor up with. Now, the chains I didn't get until recently, but these are one of the most useful things ever for mooring up, and mooring up in an easy way. Basically, what you have with these, if you've seen the metal sort of corrugated siding of the canal, and it has one sheet of metal that goes across, almost like what this sort of reminds me of the sorts of little barriers you'd see across the road at bridges or something like that, in the UK at least. So something like this literally just drops down behind that a cross beam, and then literally you can have it in various setups, either just have the chain at the back of it, or you can have that locked at the back of it and pass the rope through there. But it's basically just attaching a chain to the side of the canal. Obviously you need the metal thing to actually be able to moor up with these. But luckily on the Llangollen that is almost all of the canal up to a certain point, sort of past Pontcysufley area. And that obviously makes it extremely easy to just pop a rope through these larger rings and then tie up to. Very similar to that, but not as secure, you've got these mooring hooks. Once again, it's nice and simple. Drop that down the back of the metal beam. I don't know what you would call it, but just the piece of metal that goes lengthways along the canal. Twist it like that, rope through there, and once again, you're moored up, easy peasy. Obviously, there's the potential. It's unlikely, but there is the potential, and it has happened to me, where I've come back to the boat to find that my back rope has been retied. Possibly because it's been slid up and down, finally managed to escape and let the boat float off into the middle of the canal. But like I say, you don't see that very often with these. But just beware, it's a potential. And of course, you've got your final way of mooring. This is the most common one that you see on holiday boats. Your good old mooring pin, where you basically hammer that in. Definitely want a mallet as well if you've got one of these. A good solid mallet. Remember, if you've got a mallet that's got a metal edge on it, then it will be extremely loud as you hammer that in. So I had a nice little rubber mallet, or rubberized end to the mallet, which as I was using it and using these on my original trip back home with Tilly, it was one of those moments where every time you hit it, it's like, oh, I can't cover my ears from the sound. Bang, bang, bang. So yeah, those are pretty self-explanatory. As long as you can drive these into the ground, there's some places where it'd be extremely difficult and you basically can't use these. And in that case, there's often times where it might have like a cement or concrete edge to the canal, where you will pretty much just have to carry on travelling a little bit further, because there'll be nowhere for your rings or your hooks to, or your chains or your hooks to moor up to. So, we've been inside talking about these little bits for long enough. Let's get a little bit of fresh air. And you can see here we're using rings, so none of the aforementioned devices are necessary, but it does lead us nicely on to what I do want to talk about, which is rope. Now you can see here that we've got a lot of spare rope on the back here, and personally I think that having the spare rope is vital. You can see obviously the back here, it'd be easy to go, well, never going to moor up more than a few foot away from the ring or whatever I'm using to moor up. But you just never know, and in some cases the space on mooring rings in particular can be a good distance further than my actual boat. These ones are pretty much 30 foot apart by the looks of it, but the distance between this front ring here and the next ring along is probably closer to 40 foot. So by having a very long front rope, which you can see here is extremely long and goes up the front there and then onto the top, that means that if I've got a mooring ring that instead of being at the side of the boat is a little bit further on, I've obviously got a lot of spare rope that I can use to moor up, and then you have that sort of diagonal cutting across there. So it's very handy to have your different length ropes, and it's definitely better, even if it is more awkward to have the longer ropes, it's definitely better to have too much rope than not enough rope. Of course, if you've got your front and your back rope, you definitely want a spare rope, because first of all you could have some terrible incidents and lose a rope, or potentially you might want to feel a little bit more secure and put down a middle line. So you can see I always have my coiled rope that everybody always likes to take note of when I am posting these videos or posting pictures. So thank you very much for everybody who asks if I've got OCD, etc. I probably have. So yeah, basically it's a lot of the sensible things that you should think, yeah, we definitely need that. But thinking a little bit more of, right, we need a spare one of these, we need a little bit more rope just in case. Now this is something that if you're doing any travelling of any distance at all, you're almost certainly going to need a windlass. Now these are basically just the handles that you use to wind the paddles up and down on a lock, but also you should also remember it's definitely very useful when it comes to lift bridges, as they also operate from that same simple system. Now I would say beyond just having one, you would definitely want a spare windlass. I myself saw one of my windlasses get lost into the canal when my nan was working a lock, and that's a great family story that will never be over, I'm sure. But you can imagine if you've only got one and for any reason it falls into the canal while you're in a lock, then you're pretty much going to be quite literally stuck in a lock. Locked, as it were. So, now I think we'll end things here because we could literally go on indefinitely about every single item on a boat. But as you can see, just to put it into context, you've obviously got things if you're living on, like your little mops and stuff like that you want to think about. Then I've got this rather simple hand pump here, which I use to bail out rainwater if it gets wedged in little places that it can't. And also any of the condensation that forms below the floorboards inside Tilly herself. And it's just simple things like that that really you have to live it and discover as you go along exactly what your sort of perfect setup of implements would be. So thank you very much for watching. Check out my other videos for a load more of Narrowboat life. Not only things like this and tips and guides and tutorials, but general boating and scenery and fun and games, and of course all the usual outdoorsy stuff, kayaking, walking up mountains, camping, all sorts of general, I don't know, things from the great outdoors. So check those out, please subscribe, and I'll say thank you very much to everybody who has subscribed already. Over 4,000 subscribers, absolutely incredible. So thank you very much to every one of you. As well, please feel free to add me personally on Facebook and Twitter, and of course feel free to like the Facebook page, over 1,000 likes there as well, so that means a lot to me as well. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible, this recent support that I've had, and I can't thank you all enough. Once again, I'll say, I can't leave a video without plugging me books. Check out the Narrowboat Lad, my brand new book, Narrowboat and a Notebook. Only £1.53 each for Kindle. Search the titles or visit narrowboatbooks.com for the individual links. And really, until the next time, keep it boat worthy. Have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you around soon. Farewell.